Welcome back to the Centered on Buffalo podcast. We have a quick solo preview episode done by myself. We're going to talk about this divisional round matchup between the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. First off, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor and our friends at Dano Seasoning, the best seasonings in the game. Go check them out at danoseasoning.com or a retailer near you. Yum, yum, get you some. You will not regret it. All right, so let's dive into this game. I talked earlier in the week with Mina Kime. She was awesome. Thank you for all who supported that episode. That's likely our biggest episode ever, which is crazy considering she topped Josh Allen, Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, Jason Kelsey, Rob Gronkowski, many others. So it's really cool that Mina came on. That shows the growth of the show, that you all supported in that type of way. But we broke down this matchup, and I want to give you my thoughts on the game. I often do this in the pregame, but I wanted to give it a little bonus episode. This might be the game of the year in the NFL. Maybe the two best teams left. Obviously, the two top MVP candidates. And so I want to break this one down. So let's start with this Ravens offense. They've been incredible this season. Number 3 in scoring offense, right behind the Buffalo Bills. They have the number 1 rushing attack in the NFL. They have Derrick Henry, who they added this year. Zay Flowers, the number 1 receiver, who's got 44 more targets than anyone else on their team. He might not play this week. He hasn't practiced yet to date this week, but he's been explosive on the outside. That's the first Pro Bowl receiver ever in Ravens franchise history. That's wild, but that's the type of season that Zay Flowers had this year. And then obviously Lamar Jackson. He's been absolutely incredible this year. He's been incredible for a while now. Multiple MVPs. He's so efficient. And in this Todd Monken offense, he just seems to be thriving. He truly is. Their offensive line's getting better. Ronnie Stanley, their left tackle, he's gotten healthier. Their center, Lindenbaum, he's a beast. And so they have a great offensive line, and then they're creative. I mean, they'll run 6 offensive linemen with 2 250-plus tight ends, with a 300-pound fullback, and a 250-pound running back. The only one on the entire offense in this package that isn't 250 or more is just Lamar Jackson, who might be the most explosive player in the entire NFL. So how do you, as a Bills defense, slow them down? Well, the Bills did not slow them down in the first matchup, but the entire second level of their defense was out. Milano is back now. Bernard's back now. Taron Johnson's back now. What's that allow you to do is you can also hop into base defense now and feel more confident in it, that you can now add Dorian Williams onto the field. And you got to do that at times. That personnel package I just mentioned with their 6-0 linemen plus the fullback, you got to have more size out there. Taron Johnson, one of my favorite players in the entire NFL to watch on a week-to-week basis, he may have to come off the field. I almost think maybe you put Cole Bishop in, maybe for DeMar Hamlin to add a little bit more size and athleticism out there. He played a lot around the box or in the box at Utah, where you could get kind of an 8-man front defensively, and add Cole Bishop to the mix and add Dorian Williams in the mix as the third linebacker. So I think you'll see some base defense from this Bills team against the Ravens. The last time they played them in the playoffs, I understand, different offense. That was Greg Roman at the time as the offensive coordinator. Now it's Todd Monken. But the last time, the Bills did some different looks where they had backers on the edges. Lorenzo Alexander, maybe that's now Dorian Williams, who's playing on the edge at times and just screaming off the edge. If they're going to run that read option game, he's screaming off the edge. Now, can that leave you more susceptible in the secondary? Yes, but with an offense like the Ravens or even the Bills, at times you have to compromise parts of your defense to go try and take away one of their strengths. So I think you could see some different looks defensively. And then if you get them into passing situations, I like the defensive personnel right now, this package that the Bills are using with Oliver, Rousseau, and Von Miller is the only 3D linemen on the field. And then you keep Milano and Bernard on the field, and maybe it's a 5-man rush. Maybe Milano is spying on Jackson and they try and flush him out of the pocket. But I just feel like that is where the Bills have been able to create more pressure on obvious pass downs, is through that package there. So I expect them to lean into that if they can get them into those obvious pass situations. What's one thing throughout this season that's been common in Baltimore losses that has put them in those obvious pass situation? Procedural penalties. They're going to be playing at Highmark Stadium this time as opposed to playing in Baltimore. The noise is going to be deafening, especially if this is a tight game. That could lead to some procedural penalties, which could put them in the obvious passing opportunities there. And so that's when the Bills could be able to get some pressure on Lamar Jackson. And I'll say this: I think seeing a Todd Monken offense once, similar to playing against the Dolphins and Mike McDaniels in that offense, seeing it once and being able to get a certain level of comfort, I believe is now an advantage heading into the second matchup for this Bills defense. Now, we're going to get into the Ravens defense in a second, the Bills offense. I think both these offenses understand when you come into the game, you're going to score. Each team's going to score, and you're going to have to outpace the other one. And we'll get into the keys of the game on what I think dictates the winner in the end. But both teams understand there's going to be plays made against them. How can you slow the other group down? That's going to be critical in this matchup, and how you were able to slow down a Derrick Henry, try and make them one dimensional, and then try and make some plays in the pass game, force some punts, potentially some turnovers. That's got to be the blueprint for this Bills defense. All right, so looking at this Ravens defense, when the Bills played them in week 4, the Ravens defense was reeling. A new defensive coordinator this year, and through the first 10 weeks of the season, the Ravens defense gave up the most passing yards per game in the NFL. They were 27th in total yards allowed and 26th in scoring and 30th in third down defense. You would never expect to hear that about a Baltimore Ravens defense, but that's what they were through 10 games. Now, they played really well against the Bills, but they didn't play really well against really anybody else through the first 10 weeks of the season. They brought back in Dean Pease to be a senior analyst. He was their longtime defensive coordinator, and they made some personnel switch ups. They benched one of their linebackers, Kyle Hamilton. They were kind of roaming him around, playing some nickel. Now he's strictly playing safety. That seems to be working for him and their defense. And now they've gone from giving up 25 points a game to only 15 points a game. And in all those categories I mentioned, passing yards allowed per game, total yards, scoring, third downs, over the stretch from week 11 on, they're number 1 in the NFL. So they switched everything up, and they are playing some great defense right now. So that's where you're seeing these huge lopsided victories from this Ravens team, is because they're playing excellent on both sides of the ball. And so how do you attack this Ravens defense that has playmakers at all 3 levels of the defense? Well, I think first and foremost, and this is the case a lot of weeks in the NFL, especially the way the Bills are built, they're built to be able to expose the second level of the defense, the linebackers, safeties that come down in the box, maybe the nickel, with their matchups. Khalil Shakir has been effective all year. Number 1 in yards for the Bills in the passing game. Khalil Shakir has been effective. He was dinged up in that first matchup against the Ravens. I expect him to be more productive this time, and I think he could really make some hay if the Ravens are going to run some zone defense there in the middle. And I also think it could be another big game for the Bills running backs, whether that's in the run game, but especially catching the football in the backfield, and then also the tight ends. They can expose that linebacker level of this Ravens defense. This Ravens defense ranks number 1 in the NFL against the run. Part of that is because they've played with such big leads. Teams have to pass the ball to try and get back into it. And then also they have guys that are great against the run. They have, their 2 defensive tackles and Pierce and Jones. Those guys are studs up front. They have Roquan Smith at the second level. They got Kyle Hamilton, who comes down the box. He's massive safety. They got guys that can stop the run over there, but it's also, sometimes stats can be a little misleading. They played with the lead so much this year that a lot of times teams are trying to throw the football to get back in the game. So the Bills throughout this game, when they do get in obvious pass situations, they got to be able to identify the rush schemes. So the last time they played against Baltimore, they were playing at Baltimore. It's a lot harder to communicate, and they really struggled identifying which guys were coming, on each and every play. Sometimes they would bring, 6, 7 guys to the line of scrimmage. Other times they were dropping and only bringing 3 or 4, and Josh had a hard time identifying those. Being at home, being able to communicate that will help this Bills offense, but they've got to identify those guys to keep the pressure away from Josh Allen. And I mentioned that the Ravens have the number 1 rush defense in the NFL. Well, the Broncos had the third best rush defense in the NFL, and the Bills ran for over 200 a week ago. You got to stay balanced in this game. You don't want to have quick 3-and-outs. You want to be able to possess the ball throughout the game, keep your defense off the field at times, let them get to the sideline and make their adjustments. So I still feel like you can get in your 21 personnel with Reggie Gilliam. You can get in your sixth offensive line look with Alec Anderson and get those guys on the field and still pound the football, but then also run the play action off of it, which, like I said, can expose that second level of that Ravens defense. And then, just like we talked about in many of the Baltimore losses, their offense was slowed down because of procedural penalties. Maybe it's a fumble here and there. And so the Bills on the other side have to avoid that as well. They had way too many pre-snap penalties on offense last week against the Broncos that hurt them in their down and distance. They were able to overcome. They put up over 30 points again. You don't want to do that again this week against the Ravens. Then the Bills have had incredible ball security with turnovers all year long. This isn't the week to start it. Let's not start this week, turn that football over. You got to win the turnover battle this week. So I'm quickly going to give my 3 keys to the game. These will be the same ones I give on WGR before the game, but I'm going to spoil them a little bit now. Big game like this, I've had fun all week kind of digging into this. Number 1, got to win the red zone touchdown scoring percentage. Oftentimes, when teams are balanced like this in big games, show me after the game the turnover differential and the red zone touchdown scoring percentage, and I'll likely show you the winner. And so when the Bills get down in the red zone, they've got to score 7. They cannot settle for field goals in those instances. And then conversely, the Ravens, you got the best red zone scoring offense in the league. The Bills have got to just try to get a couple stops. If they can get 2 stops down there, we always call those 4-point plays, the difference between getting 7 and 3. If they can have a couple of those 4-point possessions, okay, the Ravens drove the ball down the field. They hit a big play. They got down in the red zone. You be able to stop them a couple times. I feel like the Bills will be able to get the win. All right, so then the numbers on this are Ravens number 1 in red zone score touchdown percentage. The Bills number 2. Ravens defense is 12th. Bills defense is 16th. Pretty even matchup when you look at offenses and defenses there. Bills need to win the red zone touchdown scoring percentage. Number 2, it's got to be Josh Allen time. It truly is. I mean, this has been his year of efficiency and all that. But in the playoffs, Josh has taken over games. He truly has. Listen to this. So of quarterbacks that have 5+ starts in NFL history, Josh Allen is building an all-time playoff resume. He's number 1 in yards per game, number 1 in touchdowns per game. He's number 1 in touchdown to interception ratio. He's 23-4. He has the lowest interception percentage among quarterbacks with at least 10 starts. He's got the highest passer rating with the most, he's got the most games above a 135 passer rating. And then, of course, he's got the most rushing yards ever in the postseason by a quarterback. He broke that last week. Actually, Lamar passed him previously, and then Josh passed him up. So whoever owns that title could, be, the whoever gets more rushing yards at the end of this one likely holds that record. Josh currently holds it, though. But it's got to be Josh Allen time. Put the ball in his hands, let him win this game, whether it's on using his legs. The last time the Bills played in a game this cold in the playoffs, New England at home a few years ago, Josh played the perfect game. He really killed the Patriots with his legs in that one. He gets on the move in the cold. He seems to move well in it. He's a California kid, but he played up in Wyoming. There's just something about Josh playing in these playoff games in the cold, and I'd like to see him take this one over as well. And look, if you lose, you're going home. You're I guess they say nowadays, you're going to Cancun. And so I wouldn't be afraid if I'm Joe Brady to utilize Josh's legs on some designed quarterback runs in this game. Number 3, you got to handle the cold. Both teams are going to have to deal with the weather. It's going to be cold. Not sure on the wind, saying maybe snow, but the wind chill is likely going to be below 0. So how does that play a part? Well, turnovers can come because ball security becomes tough. Those balls are going to be extremely hard, especially mid-drive. And I talk about this fairly often on the broadcast. At the start of the drive, you go out, you got this warm ball. They've put it in front of the heater. They're trying to start you off with a warm ball. Well, as the possession goes on and that ball stays on the field, it's going to get colder. It's harder. It's slicker. And so you got to be able to handle it in those conditions. And you often see the ball hit the turf a lot more when you play in games that are this cold. There's a mental toughness component to this. You know, I played in games where you get a team down, they start to feel sorry for themselves in the cold and they quit. Likely not happening in the playoffs, but there's a mental toughness component to it where the Bills seem, and the Ravens are talking about it as well, but the Bills seem like they're embracing the weather in Buffalo and they feel like they're built to win games in this weather. Baltimore would say the same, especially with their size and power on offense. Lamar has a 3-1 record in games that kicked off at 32 degrees or below. Josh is 13-3, but in games that are 20 degrees and below, which this will be, Josh is 4-0. So obviously he knows how to handle the cold. This Bills team is now saying they are built to handle the cold and they're built to be able to win in any environment. A lot of that's because of their offensive line and their ability to run the football and protect Josh. They've got to get it done this week. Final score prediction, give me 31-24. Bills beat the Ravens and they go on to, I guess, Kansas City. I'm hoping Saturday we see a Houston win, and then, you know, either Baltimore or the Bills are fighting for that AFC championship to be hosted at their stadium. But that's a monster underdog in Houston. I don't see them getting it done, but Rex Ryan got those boys all fired up last week. Maybe they're still riding high on throwing it at Rex's face after he said it was going to be a bye week last week for the Chargers playing against the Texans. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to the Center on Buffalo podcast. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, you know, on YouTube, like the video, comment, share this. I appreciate it, and it goes a long way to helping spread this to all of Bills Mafia. Thank you for tuning in.